Jayden.
I'm going to start by presenting 3 statistics to you, and all I want you to do is raise your hand if you believe any of them are fake. Alright, here's stat 1. According to the Crime Statistics Bureau of San Francisco, 81% of white homicide victims were killed by other African Americans. Raise your hand if you think this stat is fake. Here's stat 2. According to President Biden, former President Trump has added more debt to the U.S. economy than any other president. Raise your hand if you think this stat is true. Or fake, sorry. Here's stat 3. According to a recent study, cheese consumption correlates with the number of people who died by becoming entangled with their bed sheets. Raise your hand if you think this stat is fake. As real or fake as many of these stats may seem, only the last one is true. Sort of. Each one of these stats have their own reason for being false, misleading, or straight up incorrect, showing how easy it is to manipulate data for our own personal gain. Let's take a look back at the first one. According to the Crime Statistics Bureau of San Francisco, 81% of white homicide victims were killed by African Americans. This data sounds incredibly real until you do any sort of research and realize that there is no Crime Statistics Bureau of San Francisco. It doesn't exist, it's made up. It's not close to an accurate representation of the data either, as the FBI reports that 80% of white murder victims were other white people. Even worse, this made-up chart was seen and tweeted by President Trump, who has a very large following, creating more misinformation spread to thousands or even millions of people. Take a look at the second one. In this speech, President Biden purposely omits the fact that this fact is only true if we talk about presidents who only served for one term, and fails to include any context of the U.S. economy during Trump's presidency. He does this to make this stat look so much worse than it truly is. And the last one. Cheese consumption correlates with the number of people who die with becoming entangled in bed sheets. Again, this stat is totally true. As you can see here, it has a high correlation value. That means that more cheese causes more death, right? Well, not exactly. It's no different than me seeing a rise in heart attacks in a given year and a rise in Knicks tickets in a given year, and being able to say that Knicks attendance correlates with heart attack and that Knicks games cause heart attacks. It's all a total coincidence. It has no real substance at all. It's more of an example of correlation, not implying causation. The use of manipulating statistics has become an epidemic in this country and has caused an immense amount of confusion and misunderstanding among Americans, especially in the most important topics of politics, healthcare, and advertising. And it's not just politicians who make up these stats. It's all around us. Companies cherry-pick data all the time in order to promote their products to sound better than they really are. Take Colgate, for example. In 2007, Colgate ran an ad campaign in the United Kingdom with the slogan, "More than 80% of dentists recommend Colgate." At first glance, this stat makes one thing. Wow, 80% of people recommend Colgate. Then only 20% must recommend any other dental brand like Crest or Oral-B. The claim is true. 80% of dentists do recommend Colgate. But 80% of dentists also recommend Crest, and 80% of dentists also recommend Oral-B. The reality of the situation is that dentists were surveyed to give multiple recommendations on dental products, not just one. Colgate saw the survey and ran with it, using it as their marketing strategy and misleading any people that Colgate is the best dental product in the world. Colleges and universities are also perpetrators of this epidemic, finding any way they can to promote their schools academically gifted or immensely good at sports. In 2021, Penn State football released this graphic to social media, stating in bold that every Penn Stater has appeared in every Super Bowl. Again, the stat looks amazing, promoting Penn State as a school that builds and breeds winners. We take a closer look, however, and we read the fine print. We find that it says except for 5 since 1967. Again, it's no different than me saying that the New York Jets have won 1 Super Bowl and in every Super Bowl they've appeared in, because they've only appeared in 1 in their 50-year history. Sports are a major culprit of misinformation, especially with cherry picking. Cherry picking is a strategy that many use by selecting evidence to persuade their audience to accept a position. In the NBA, many fans, media companies, and teams themselves push out these pieces of data that are true, however gain little to no relevance. For example, if you look at the graph on the top left, you see that it shows 5 extremely specific stats to push a false narrative that Thaddeus Young, of all players, an average NBA player at best, is among the same lines of Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and LeBron James. Or look at this woman, Nikola Jokic, who joins Oscar Robertson as the only players to reach 150 points, 75 rebounds, 75 assists through his first 7 games. It's no different than me saying I'm the first person in this room to be at this spot, at this very moment, talking about a TED Talk about misleading information. It doesn't do anything. One of the main areas where we see bias today is through media outlets. which claim to be unbiased but are far from the truth and do this by truncating the y-axis, or purposely creating a graph where the y-axis does not start at 0. Let's take a look at this Fox News broadcast by Tucker Carlson, which uses this graph to convey the decrease in the number of Americans who identify as Christian. From the bar graph itself, we can see that the number of Christians in America has dropped significantly, and that there's a crisis in America that we used to be an enthusiastic Christian nation. If we take a closer look at the graph, however, we can see that in a 10-year span, the number of Americans who identify as Christians only dropped by 12%. However, the data graph looks like it's more than 30%. Fox News, like other media outlets, purposely misleads its audience with a misleading chart to claim that Christianity has taken a major downturn in this country and that we need to do something about it or we will no longer be a Christian nation. Fox News also recognizes that its audience is mainly conservative Christians that are gullible enough to see a graphic like this and spread it nationwide. Some of these graphs are everywhere, having any sort of narrative, pushing any sort of narrative by any means necessary. For example, this one by a local NBC station trying to show that there's an increase in mass shootings, but the size of the bar graphs are the same, but the number of school shootings is the same. Or this one by Fox News, which shows a pie chart, which is supposed to add up to 100%, but totals to 193% with a source of opinions. Sometimes stats can be minuscule and used for entertainment purposes, or not that important. Sometimes, though, they can be harmful or dangerous in any sort of situation. In 1999, Sally Clark was accused and found guilty of killing her 2 sons, who both died unexpectedly of the same disease. Both of her children had died of sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS, and the prosecution implied that Clark had to be involved because the probability of this happening was only 1 in 73 million. However, the prosecution's data was based on incorrect calculations and omitted any factors that may have contributed to her 2 sons' death. The evidence was presented to the jury as irrefutable evidence and what led to her conviction. Years later, she was found not guilty as the case was reopened and found out that the calculations were incorrect. But the case took a toll on Clark's life for years to come and eventually led to her death years later. Ultimately, the problem with misleading statistics is that they can lead us to make decisions that are not based on any accurate info. Whether we're voting in an election, making a purchase, or deciding a cause of action, we need to be able to trust the information that we're given. By being aware of the potential for misleading stats and taking the time to critically evaluate the data presented to us, we can be better and make more informed decisions. Data doesn't lie, but the way people use data can. All the data that's ever been collected has some truth to it. There are some limitations to some of them that will amplify them and many will treat as it's written in stone. This has ultimately led to the biggest demise of manipulating stats in this country. People using accurate data in its own right and being able to twist it with bias and narrative pushing to turn the data to meaningless, deceptive, and straight up manipulative. So what has been done? Thankfully, both Twitter and Instagram have implemented their own strategies to combat this, using third-party checkers and feedback from the community to identify and flag any misleading content. But it's not enough. It's more of a start rather than an overall solution. What can we do? Firstly, when we see something online that we have no idea is reliable or not, it is imperative that before you send it to a friend or a colleague or anyone like that, you check with reliable and trustworthy sources so that you can formulate your own opinion. It is so easy nowadays to find a post on Instagram, see it, have no idea if it's true or not, and send it to a friend. And that friend may see it and send it to another friend. And it creates a trend, a cycle, on and on, of people seeing any misleading statistic, and now you have hundreds of thousands of people seeing it and treating it as the truth. Sites like Reuters, AP Fact Check, PolitiFact, and others all do their best to give the most accurate information and data that can allow you to make the most informed decisions necessary in the biggest situations. It doesn't take long either. It can contain the spread of misinformation. Misinformation is not going to go anywhere, and the only way we can do is contain or ameliorate the situation so it doesn't get any worse than it really is. And I'll end with this. In roughly a year, a majority of people in this room will have the ability to vote, one of the biggest responsibilities that one can have in their lifetime. I hope that whoever you choose to elect, or any high-ranking official you choose, is based on any unbiased or unmisleading information that has not been tampered with or used to promote a narrative. Through the spread of misinformation, it's extremely difficult to find what is real and what is fake. So I urge you to be mindful and careful in making any decisions that you make for the rest of your life. Thank you.